Hello, and welcome to System Mastery Horrortoberfest, the podcast where we haunt a dead horse 1d10 spooky ghosts at a time. My name's Jeff, John's here with me, and this week we'll be discussing a creepily dead White Wolf classic, Orpheus. All this month we'll be keeping the podcast horror-themed to accompany John's annual tradition of reviewing a horror movie a day, all October long. Orpheus isn't exactly creepy, as it turns out, but you can play as ghosts, and I think there may be a class where you wear a sheet over your head. But it is old White Wolf, so that's probably just some edgy Klansman thing. So this game is actually legitimately good, isn't it?
Well, probably better than, I'd say, any of the other things we've been looking at so far.
Yeah. It's almost kind of a shame that it's dead. I mean, this is like first generation. I don't really know much about White Wolf. You're going to be the White Wolf guy.
Yeah, this was a sort of an odd experiment for White Wolf in that it came sort of late in the second edition round of things, before the new World of Darkness that they have now.
Yeah.
So it was a game that they did sort of as an experimental thing. They had the game Wraith, and that was just like the other games where you play as a vampire or werewolf or whatever, you were playing as a ghost. So this was sort of the epilogue to the Wraith series. Wraith originally started, and it had, like every other White Wolf thing, its own doomsday scenario. So Gehenna or the Apocalypse or what have you, they were all the White Wolf games had some end game to them where if your DM just decided they were bored, they could say, alright, Cain wakes up and eats all the vampires.
Weird. Couldn't it just be like, hey guys, let's play Dungeons & Dragons instead now?
Yeah, I don't know. Part of their mythology was just that no matter what you do, there is always the threat that the world will just end, and it was always one of those things where there was literally nothing you as a PC could do about it.
So it's just like rocks fall, everyone dies.
Pretty much.
I've actually heard about Cain from the vampire universe. And just to preface this, White Wolf has never really been my genre. Nothing against it. I've played a bunch of Exalted, and other than that, Orpheus represents the first White Wolf book I've read. I guess Scion technically is somehow under the White Wolf imprint, but I don't even know how. But no, Orpheus is like the first White Wolf book I've really delved into. So all the stuff about how there's apocalypses and what have you is surprising to me. This game seems like, to me it's weird because I'm viewing it almost entirely through the lens of Exalted. And I'm like, this is just broken Exalted. What's wrong?
Yeah, the Wraith game was, like I said, you're playing as ghosts, you're in the underworld, and you might haunt the living occasionally, but really it was very much set in you're a ghost dealing with other ghosts. And what Orpheus does is it sort of takes place after the apocalypse takes place for Wraith. So what happens is Oblivion has this maelstrom, wipes out pretty much the entire underworld. Every ghost that was there is dead. So it even says in the book, like, any ghost you encounter has only been a ghost for, like, the past maybe couple years. There aren't really any old ghosts around anymore. And so this is we aren't going to support Wraith anymore. And they didn't, in the new World of Darkness, really have Wraith. So Orpheus represents if you were playing Wraith or interested in it, this is like the sequel / epilogue to it.
Interesting. Okay. So, just to get that clear though, you said Oblivion has an apocalypse. Now, Oblivion must be, in Wraith, I guess that's where ghosts lived.
Well, they live in the underworld, and it's actually really similar to Exalted's underworld.
Okay.
You've got your standard underworld where all the dead people are.
All right.
And then you've got the Labyrinth, which they had in there, but that's how you get around from one place to another.
Okay.
And then you had Oblivion, which was if you actually... It's death for ghosts.
Oh, if you double died?
Yeah, if you died as a ghost, you go to Oblivion, and no one knows what's down there.
It's even worse.
Oh, yeah.
Not even a Starbucks. Yeah, okay, great. Because that's one of the things I really like this game. I think it looked like it was a fun kind of as balanced as White Wolf games get kind of thing. It's all right. But it does suffer from a problem I've encountered with previous White Wolf reading, which is that they don't use... It feels like anytime they're coming up with a new term or descriptor, they just grab a word that's similar to other stuff that's already in the book. So I was reading through sentences and it'd be like, your shade's nature may be celebrant, but his demeanor could be daredevil, while his haunt is poltergeist. And it's like, what? What the fuck?
Yeah, White Wolf has sort of an issue with, they need to come up with a lexicon for every one of their games.
Yeah.
And so you start with Vampire, and you're like, okay, this kind of makes sense. And then every time they add a game onto that, you're like, oh, what the fuck are you talking about?
Just say strength. Come on. And this game has a lot of things you choose. Let's go through character creation in the Orpheus universe, because, alright, if you played White Wolf games, you already know the basics. You have the 9 stats. You've got physical, social, and mental. You get set numbers of points in each one, because this is old White Wolf, so you always had
one... You have to pick what your specific thing is about. If you're all about your mentals, you get more points to put into mentals, and you pick, 1, 2, 3 of which one is your best and middle and least favored.
And then those 9 statistics or attributes will inform a number of your other things, your sub-attributes, your things like willpower and stuff like that. This game has you choose, in addition to that, a race kind of and a class kind of.
White Wolf, and they do this in Exalted as well with the different casts that you can get. And, whether it's the type of clan you're in as a vampire or what type of werewolf clan you're in and so on. Yeah. You'll recognize that as classes, but for some reason, White Wolf is really hesitant to call anything a class.
I think that's probably going to dive into the whole gamist versus narrativist versus simulationist thing that you see people arguing over on like EN World and stuff. They're terrified of using any word that sounds ruly that might bring someone down out of their reverie of gaming.
Well, yeah, because class represents sort of what your job is, whereas what they're trying to do is say, oh, well, this is how your character reacts in the world, or what they associate with.
Yeah, exactly. So, in this game, your class, I'm gonna say class, fuck you, White Wolf, your class boils down to what type of traditional Hollywood ghost you are. So you've got banshees, you've got poltergeists, you've got haunters, and you've got
puppet masters,
and there's at least one more.
And the will-o-wisp.
The will-o'-the-wisp, and so each one of them basically interacts with the world in a obvious way. Like a banshee, of course, screams at it.
Yeah, they're obvious horror tropes for what a ghost does. So the banshee is the creepy whispers and yelling and sort of manipulating emotions.
Where poltergeists can move stuff around in a room, but they don't necessarily jump inside the stuff. They're just like,
they just throw things.
Yeah, throw things, flip your chairs upside down, build themselves a body out of chunks of meat, that sort of thing. Yeah. The person who would actually go in and inhabit a thing is a haunter.
And that would be your Amityville Horror, the bleeding walls, the notes on your bathroom mirror when you get out of the shower.
Yeah, your haunted car where you can see the face of the dead driver in the rearview mirror. Yeah, will-o'-the-wisps control, like, bursts of visible lights.
They are probably the most, I wouldn't say aggressive, but they have, like, electricity or fire nimbus around them. So they also have the classic will-o'-wisp thing where they can make themselves show up as, like, a little thing of light and you want to follow them.
Right. And then that leaves us with the last one, which is puppet masters, and those are ones that inhabit other people and basically control them for a while. So they're possessing entities.
Yeah.
And then after you choose those, and those are your lament, I think? Is that right? No, that's your shade. Yeah. That's your shade. Shade is your class. Lament is your race. Sort of. And it's not really a race, it just determines how it is that you are ghosty.
Yeah.
Because you're not always a ghost. In fact, most of the time you're not a ghost. It's
That's the big thing about Orpheus, is rather than it being, like Wraith where you are a ghost, the story really takes place with, the Orpheus group is a company that figures out how to, get people to essentially cross over, just, astrally project or go into a chemical coma and get people to project into the ghost world and interact with ghosts.
Yeah.
So it really wants you to just be a human, although it does give you options for, you can play as a ghost if you want to, someone who's already dead. But we really want you to be a human, because that's sort of what makes Orpheus unique.
The concept, yeah. And especially because since you're working for a company, it's kind of hard to come up with rewards that are functional for a ghost.
Yeah, it's sort of weird, like, you can, in the game it says if you're one of the humans and you end up dying on the job and becoming a ghost, you can stick around and help and do whatever, because, you know, you might have unfinished business, whatever, you were on a job, or you feel some sort of loyalty to the company. But saying, I'm gonna start my character as a ghost, unless you say, I am starting my character as a ghost who was a dead Orpheus agent to begin with, it seems really weird to be like, yeah, I was a mechanic and then I died and decided, fuck it, let's go work for Orpheus.
Don't worry though, the chances of you playing as a mechanic who became a ghost are super low, because there's no way a mechanic has an edgy enough background. maybe if you were like a rape mechanic who worked in racist utopia or something, then you could, because this game is steeped in 90s White Wolf edginess.
Well, it's anytime you have a game that's like, we're for a mature audience.
Every fourth word is prostitute.
Yeah, we really want to try and push that this isn't a game for babies. This isn't a kid for some 12-year-old's imagination thing. No, this game is all about, like, dark death and sex and yeah.
Did you just finish watching The Crow? You'd like to roleplay this game, I bet.
Oh yeah. So,
you know he died in that movie.
So yeah. So while it offers you the ability to be a ghost, the game really wants you to be human. And that's the most interesting part about it, is that fish out of water weird experience where you're a dude going into a world that you shouldn't be in and so on.
Yeah, basically it's Ghostbusters, except that instead of having a proton pack, you astrally project and pretend, you kind of become Slimer.
Yeah.
You go, oh, I'm going to be Slimer today, and run around and see how many hot dogs I can get in my mouth, and then the Orpheus group will pay me when they bring me out of my coma.
Yay!
Yeah. So that's the basic concept. So far we've picked some stats, which you do based on your archetype. That tells you archetype. You choose that. That's things like bicycle messenger.
It's sort of what you were, because, and again, Orpheus found out that the way you can astrally project is you have to have multiple near-death experiences.
Yeah.
So that's part of where the edgy thing comes from, is anyone who plays as a human in Orpheus has to have had a life where they were put into near-death experiences multiple times.
Where they constantly almost died. And the things that they have decided represent people who constantly almost die are hilarious. It's one of my favorite things. Archetypes basically represent what you were, and then the Orpheus group finds you and says, hey, come work for us. And we're one of those cool shadow companies where you get an office with a half pipe in it. That kind of, that sort of, you saw that in the 90s a lot, where they'd pull guys off the street and give them ultra offices and that kind of movie. That's what this is. You get a cool hot blonde secretary and maybe another one if that's your thing, and she's always picking you up in a cool car, even though you're homeless. That's basically what you used to be. The things that they determine are likely to cause a lot of near-death experiences include things like prostitutes, different prostitutes, abuse victim, bicycle messenger, which is my favorite because bicycle messenger they all have these cool little edgy descriptions about how your life went. And all I can tell from the bicycle messenger is that you're playing as the world's shittiest bicycle messenger.
Oh yeah, you're just really bad about getting out of traffic.
Always falling into giant pits, getting hit by trucks. It's apparently it's a way worse career than you would think. They also have things like soldier, doctor, trainer, animal kin, ranger type stuff, which I assume those people die constantly, almost die.
Well, the thing is, you're looking at it and you're like, okay, we've got to come up with
20
ideas for how you can have a class where you face death constantly. So once you move past, alright, you're someone on the street, or a gang member, or a soldier, or your typical sort of, you're always in a combat situation, they're like, alright, what are we left with? You're a deep sea diver? You run out of oxygen a lot? I don't even know.
Yeah, and then eventually you get to bike messenger, and that's like, you know what, I bet that career is probably dangerous. Let's just put that in there.
You know, my cousin's a bike messenger, and he always has these stories about how he almost died. Let's put bike messenger in.
Role-playing game designer.
Yeah.
Why not? And this is another fun thing. Right before the archetype section, which again is how you determine what your stat spread is going to be. It kind of informs how you choose your classes and stuff. So that's what this is. It's not just a role-playing aid, although it's that too. It also tells you, like, how many points to put in your social skills versus your mental skills, that kind of stuff. But one more thing about it is that it says if you're playing as one, you should check to make sure you're not triggering anyone else at the table.
Which is so weird, because this is super pre-Tumblr, before the whole trigger warning thing. White Wolf was very sensitive about, okay, yes, an abuse survivor might be someone that has faced near-death experiences a lot. However, if your storyteller happens to be an abuse survivor, you probably don't want to do that.
Or you could do it and tell them how lucky they are, because eventually they'll have a super sweet life of chasing ghosts around as a ghost. I mean, lucky them, right? Fucking bastard. But, no, and it specifically says if your storyteller, which is this game's DM, if your storyteller is an abuse survivor, then you probably shouldn't play as an abuse survivor. It doesn't mention the other players. I assume fuck them.
Well,
It's
yeah.
a basic concept, yeah.
Also, I like
Walk
that
it off, Nancy.
It isn't, if your storyteller is a vet, don't be a soldier.
Yeah. Although it specifically uses abuse survivor, but I like the idea that it's like, oh man, don't you mention bicycle messaging to me. I saw some things, man. And some stuff.
Oh man, I tried to give this letter to a dude in an office building. Changed my life.
So far, you pick your lament, your shade, your archetype, and then you also pick your nature. And nature is a White Wolf tradition. It's stuff like Daredevil, Rebel.
It is just how... It's mostly just an RP thing that occasionally will give you a benefit if you're playing to your demeanor.
Right. And White Wolf's always had a big old list of these, and you kind of get used to seeing them. I'm used to them from Exalted, for example. There's a bunch that are useful and a bunch that I don't know why I guess they put them in there just so you can build very realistic NPCs. Like Conformist and Wretch and, just stuff like that where it's like, well, how do you regain willpower and interact with the world? Oh, by being just a big bitch. I just shy away from everything and don't get into situations and agree with anything anyone tells me.
Yeah, and I mean, they're there for...
completeness sake.
Yeah, it's a lot of, we need this for completion's sake and for NPCs. But there is always the option of like, okay, you know what? I made a haunter. He's a conformist, and he just likes being in buildings. He doesn't want to deal with people, and anytime someone's like, go haunt that car, he's like, okay.
Okay, I'll go. Well, wait, is that in a building?
Yeah, so, you know, I can see someone trying to use one of the weirder ones, but they're definitely corner case.
Yeah, it's a fun... White Wolf never just gives you the parts you need to play. It loves to give you everything you might need. It's just like when we were talking about Prime Directive, where it's like, okay, there's a list of ranks that your character and your bullshit Prime team can be. And I'm sorry, I'm triggering you right now. I know.
Trigger warning, Prime Directive.
There's a little shitty list of ranks that specifically Prime teams can be. That doesn't stop the book from going all the way from Private to fucking 5-star Ultra Admiral, because it's a nerd writing this book, and damn if he's not going to complete the whole thing.
Well, yeah. Even if that's something you can't get, while you're writing it out, you're like, well, I'm already here, I may as well.
So that's probably why they're in there. So you choose your nature, and then you choose your demeanor, which is a special nature that only ghosts have, which is the same thing. It's just more of that. That one informs how much extra substats you get. It tells you how much to add to your vitality and your willpower and your spite rate. Or no, sorry, vitality, willpower, and spite ratings. Let's talk about those real quick. Vitality is
that is your health, your HP for ghosts.
Yeah, but it's a lot more than that, because you also spend it for powering your abilities.
Yeah.
It's like the mana and the HP at the same time.
Yeah, it's sort of odd. It is, they use a lot of stats to kind of double dip in this.
Yeah.
So willpower is, again, one of those stats where it's like, this represents, your willpower, how much force of personality you have. You can spend willpower to get successes on things, because you just really want it that bad.
Which has always been one of my least favorite things about White Wolf, because it's supposed to be one of those games that's heavy on role-playing and light on combat, but everyone's got like 8 willpower, which means during the 8 dice rolls you're going to make during this game, you basically have an auto-success for all of them. Plus, it's a cycling mechanic, so you almost never dip below like 6.
See, and at least with Orpheus, you can spend willpower to get vitality back. So your through sheer force of will.
You have to.
Yeah,
it's neat. If you die, it just pumps HP back into your system automatically.
Yeah, you can't die as long as you have any willpower points.
Yeah. Yeah, your character is far too stubborn to die. That's actually kind of neat. I like that.
Yeah.
Honestly, vitality doesn't bother me. Well, we can probably talk about White Wolf mechanics and how they grump me up a little later, but for now, let's stick to this. Vitality covers your ability to activate your abilities.
Yep.
Your abilities include things like horrors.
Yes. Your horrors are your basic
ghost power,
depending on what what we were talking about with like the will-o-wisp making people follow you, or the banshee affecting people's emotions. You all have horrors, which are your powers.
Yes, and so like a banshee will have a wail that can control people's minds, that sort of thing, or scare people. It's like that. The horrors are your ghost powers. You're used to seeing ghosts with powers because you've seen movies, so you know what these are. And then spite is the degree to which you are angry. Tainted. Okay, it's kind of when you become an angrier ghost because you're mad at your situation or because you're haunting all the time. Haunting, like wandering around with chains and shaking them at Cratchit or Scrooge. Then you gain spite, and spite is a rating that controls how. It's almost like a loss of control mechanic. I think when you get to maximum spite, you don't lose control, but at that point, you're basically more demon-y than ghosty.
Well, you get, the interesting thing is, your spite can be used for beneficial things. You can use spite to give yourself more vitality. You can do, different things with, like, if you've got a high spite rating, you'll get these stains on your soul. And the stain will give you some power, so maybe the stain is you've got weird claws. Okay, so because you've got claws, because your soul has been stained with spite, you've got extra damage on your unarmed attacks. However, it also means trying to do anything with, like, fine motor skill, typing anything, or trying to, like, craft something or whatever is all fucked up because you've got these claws.
I think one of my favorite things about reading the haunt section there, or what are those called again? Stains? The stains section. I'm gonna keep messing up what these things are called because they're all just called stuff ghosts have. Yeah, they're all just words ghosts that describe ghosts. So, okay, stains. One of them is written by someone who clearly watched Beetlejuice that day. Because it's your face has been kind of pulled tight so that you have a hawk beak, and that you can use that to sort of stab people, but it's real hard to talk.
Yeah.
It's like, alright, you just watched Beetlejuice when you wrote that. Come on. Alright, so
spite is interesting in that way. And the other cool thing with spite is, so when you're using a horror, one of your special powers, it does whatever. So let's say you're a haunter. You're in a haunted house. You're haunting this building.
Haunt.
Woo woo. So you want to scare the resident out. So you go ahead and you go, I'm gonna write a message on the window that says, get out. Now, if your spite rating is high enough, it changes the special effects of your powers. So as normally it would just be this ectoplasmic thing shows up on the mirror or whatever and says, get out. Now it's dripping blood. So it just gives more horror effects to your horrors.
Oh, now, structurally, it's not necessarily a bad thing to play as a high spite character, but it's potentially dangerous, because
if you reach maximum spite, you become a specter.
Which is the bad guy ghosts in the game.
You just sort of become an NPC at that point.
Which is a shame, because when you hear that, when you think, oh my gosh, okay, my choices are to write get out in the dust on a dusty old mirror, or to write cool dripping blood get out backwards when read through a nearby mirror, you think, oh, that one's awesome, I'm doing that one. Well, no, you don't want to. That's what your character doesn't want to do. Your character wants to be a good ghost.
Well,
Casper it up.
Again, it's only if your spite happens to reach the max rating.
So you kind of want to surf in that mid-range of spite so you can actually do cool ghost things.
Oh yeah, you want to be a super spooky, awesome ghost, but you also don't want to just lose your character.
Okay, so far we've covered willpower, vitality. We got a little bit into vitality, which again represents your hit points. You take vitality damage if something hits you. You can spend vitality to activate your powers. You can give vitality to your party, which in this game is not called a party because that word would scare people. Instead, it's called a crucible.
Well, yeah, so that is another White Wolf thing, has a different name for party in every game.
Yes.
So you've got a coterie, or you've got a circle,
yeah,
or
tribe.
whatever.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you've got all of these different ways to say your party. You've got a bunch of different ways to say class, but whatever.
Yeah, so it's a crucible. But you can give vitality to other people in your crucible just by touching them or by being within line of sight of them if you want. You can also forcibly steal vitality from things. You can vampire some spite out or vitality out of people, although it raises your spite. Oh, and we didn't talk about we mentioned laments, but we didn't talk about them. There are 4 laments. Laments are the sort of race of the game.
Yeah.
Now here's the basics. I'll just run them through. One of them is you can just astrally project. You can just kind of pop out of your body.
You are some sort of yogi. You can just kind of go into a meditative trance.
One of them is wishes he was that, but is not, and instead has to be put into a chemically induced freezing cryocoma, and then he becomes a cool ghost for a while.
Yeah.
Then there's one that's just a dead guy.
You are just a ghost.
And then there's one that's just a dead, special type of drug abuser, because the game has a drug called pigment.
Which is part of the overall setting is there's a designer drug out there that is super addictive, and it is called pigment. And if you were a pigment addict and you die, instead of becoming a regular ghost, you become a hue.
H-U-E. You don't become Hugh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You become a hue because pigment and hues and lol.
Yeah. Color.
So, and pigment is interesting for the setting because pigment users, it has a weird psychedelic effect, and people say they see a bunch of weird things, and really, pigment it allows people who are on this drug to see dead people.
Right. So whoever wrote that section probably went on to write John dies at the end later. Because I just remembered how old this game is, and I was going to accuse them of ripping it off. But no, that would not add up. Okay, so basically there's a drug that lets you see ghosts but makes you think you're crazy, and when you die you become a hue, which is a weird ghost. You're kind of a shitty ghost.
The drug itself stains your very soul.
Yeah.
And so, the hue, this race, is a ghost that can never get above a 7 in vitality.
Which normally goes to 10.
So you're very limited in how high your vitality go.
Yeah, and also other people can temporarily pump their vitality above 10 through various effects, but Hugh's stuck at 7. That's as high as they can go.
Never get above whatever your maximum is.
Yeah.
And they also start with a higher spite rating, and
they can control their spite more efficiently. I think.
They're better at controlling spite, but again, it's just your soul has been stained through the use of this drug. Because it is some weird drug that I know not only affects your body, but affects your very soul.
So one of the things I was doing right before we started is I was rereading through the section on vitality and what it does. And there's a point where it tells you about how you can freely transfer it to other people within your crucible. And also, it says that your crucible can pull their vitality to create additional ghosts. It says they can get them above being just blips, which is a kind of glossary term for kind of a specter, like a light.
Well, it's one of those ones where it's like, what is this? It's a ghost that is continually doing the same thing. So it's one of those ghosts that doesn't have autonomy. the free will, the autonomy, who's just like, this ghost died being a maid, and occasionally people see the ghost maid cleaning up the house.
So that's a blip.
Yeah, that would be a blip.
Well, they give you the capacity as a crucible to pool all your vitality and actually spend willpower, permanent willpower, which you have to rebuy through XP, to create ghosts. And it doesn't mention how this works. It doesn't tell you if you have to kill someone so that there's a nearby ghost to be created.
Well, I think it's trying to give a blip actual...
Maybe that's it. Like, you can take a blip and make... Because it says you can create blips. And I was like, that's weird. It seems like those are made out of dead people. You can't just make them from nothing. But then, of course, because it's White Wolf, it's like, oh, you can use this to create an ally or like a librarian to work in your library. Or a sex slave. Or a regular slave. Or a thrall.
You know,
like,
we're into that.
Yeah, that's the sort of thing you do with your player character party is, oh, man, what are we doing this week? Oh, I'd like to spend some of my permanent character investments on building a sex slave for Jerry.
Well, and that, it's just the White Wolf thing of like, with vampires, you could spend some of your blood, and your blood is addictive, so you get a thrall.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh yeah, I decided to make this dude my thrall with my sex blood, and now he's my bitch. And you're like, great.
It's just White Wolf. You just ignore it. Or these days they promise not to put it in their books anymore, and then they kind of do, and then people fight with them about it. That's the saga of White Wolf, is that they keep accidentally putting their goofity sex nonsense in there. And depending on the way the world is currently acting, everyone either embraces it and then doesn't use it in play, or they fight about it till it's gone in the first place.
Yeah.
Okay, so far we've covered shade, lament, nature, demeanor, and archetype, and I think that's all the basics you need to create a character, but then you get into your, skills.
Oh yeah, you've got your various abilities, and those cover your general things. You've got, driving and melee and computers and so on.
And if you've never ever played a White Wolf game of any kind before, here's the ultra basic rundown. The whole game is based around D10s. You look for successes. A success is determined by rolling a 7 or higher on a D10.
No, that is only for Exalted.
Oh.
They changed that up with the old World of Darkness.
Oh.
And so on in their games. It's difficulty. The difficulty of what I'm using is the target number. So, in sort of the later games, they made it so that you're always trying to roll a 7 or better, and difficulty is just how many successes you need. In this, it was much more, the difficulty is what you needed to roll on the D10. So if it was difficulty 5 or 4, it was real easy.
Yeah, because all you had to do was roll a 4 or higher and on any number out of your dice pool. To generate your dice pool, you take your relevant attribute, which would be strength, con, dex, one of those, and add it to the ability that you're using. Although this game separates abilities up into like abilities and talents and skills, and it's kind of weird because you can find similar ones in all three. So let's just take one. Let's say you want to hack a computer. You would take your intelligence, which was probably like a 3 dot, let's say, because it ranges from 1 to 5, where 1 is
so you're above average.
Yeah, you're above average. So 1 is dumb guy, 2 is normal, 5 is ultra genius.
Yeah.
You add that 3 dots becomes 3 dice. Add that to the number of dots worth of dice from your computer skill.
So let's say you've got 3 in that too, because you are a talented dude with a computer.
Right. So then you roll 6 dice, and you add any other dice or subtract any other dice that the situation requires. You roll 6 dice, and if the target is 5, then you need to roll a 5 on one of those 6 dice, or 5 of those 6 dice. Is it just one of them?
Just one.
Just one.
So you're looking, it's the same way as anything else works. It just changes what the number you're looking for successes.
That is really dumb.
Now, the number of successes you get will say how awesome you did.
Okay.
And they have a rule, which is if you've got a number of dice equal to or greater than whatever the difficulty is, you can just say, you know what, I'll take a success on it. You can't do it in combat, obviously. But if it's like, okay, you know what, I've got a 4 intelligence, I've got a 4 in computers, and it's difficulty 6 to do this. You know what, I'm so good at computers and hacking, I'm just gonna say I get a success. I have more dice than the difficulty is.
Okay. That's
now, you don't get the extra successes that you might from rolling, but you can just sort of move play along.
Right, which is good.
And the danger of rolling is they also included the negatives.
Yeah.
So if you roll, and let's say it's difficulty 8. So you need 8s to do this. It's hard. You roll, and, oh, hey, you got 2 successes. However, you also rolled 2 1s showed up. Every 1 removes a success.
Yeah.
And if you didn't roll any successes and got a 1, you just botched and fucked everything up.
Right, so this game can be fairly dangerous to actually try to do anything. Now, that's that mechanic there where you can just say, oh, I overpower this by just being better at it than the target difficulty. That's a good mechanic, but keep in mind when you're building that kind of thing for play, you don't want to force rolls all the time just so that you can get that sort of thing. If your goal is like, oh, I'm gonna open up my computer and check my email for the day, probably don't need to roll for that.
No.
Yeah.
But even then, if you're you're a super genius with a 5 in intelligence and a 5 in hacking, and you're just the best ever, and he's like, can you get past the firewall at the library? You're like, yes, I can. Shut the fuck up.
Firewall at the library. Finally, I can browse porn as a ghost!
Ooh, ghost porn!
Oh boy. Okay. So, those are your abilities, and you add your attributes to those, and that generates your ability to figure out how much difficulty something requires. This game's got a lot of weird abilities. It's got that kind of early White Wolf problem where the abilities are vaguely edgy and not especially well defined. I spent a good 10 minutes yesterday trying to figure out the actual difference between intrigue, the ability, and subterfuge, the ability. And as far as I can tell, one of them is lying to your friends, and the other one is kind of lying to your enemies or something.
I have no idea what the difference would be, but I'm sure there's something. I'm sure there is.
But the thing is that White Wolf was big on splat books during this era, and they would always add more abilities in them, and those abilities would always just be reskinned versions of abilities that already existed. So I'm sure there's a big difference between intrigue or subterfuge, but let's be honest, if you've got one, you're going to be able to talk your storyteller into it accepting it for the other one's role.
Oh, probably. And that was, again, the problem with White Wolf. The splats came out, and so it wasn't enough to have a drive skill. You had to have, like, a boating skill, and it wasn't enough to have computers as a skill. Hacking had to be its own separate thing.
Well, yeah, and then they eventually separated out Linux from Mac. I mean, this was set in the 90s, so there was a whole skill for Netscape Navigator.
Yeah, the game is very much based on goofy crap, and the different abilities that you can use, you probably will just be able to go, look, I took some points in intrigue, I don't have points in subterfuge, will you please just let me sub in, or give me half of the skill that I can roll? Don't be a dick, Jerry. This is primarily aimed at Dan.
No, I'm sorry. It is neither subterfuge nor intrigue. I'm afraid that you needed to take some skill points in chicanery.
I'm sorry, this is the skullduggery skill.
It's immediately adjacent to flim flam in the book. Okay, so another thing that you get to choose when you're building your character is your backgrounds. And these are, again, ranging from 1 to 5 dot, and they represent things you bring with you as the game begins. They're resources upon which you can draw that the game had when you started. These exist in most of the settings as well. They include things like mentor, followers, things like power over the community, things along those lines, contacts.
Yeah.
So if you've got a 3 dot mentor, then you've got a guy who is relatively well invested in your well-being and can probably teach you some skills.
Yeah.
If you've got a 5 dot artifact, then you own, a rune blade of significant power.
Basically, and the way the artifacts in this work is the only place artifacts exists is with ghosts. So this is something that was an item of such importance to the people that owned it or anyone else that it crossed over as an item into the other world. So, a 1 dot thing would just be, this was this dude's favorite tie or something.
Yeah, okay.
It would just be a goofy little good luck charm. Something that was 5 would be like, this is an actually internationally known thing that ended up getting destroyed, and so when it got destroyed, it went over.
I have the ghost of the Magna Carta!
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, great. This is one of my least favorite things about White Wolf, but Orpheus, I've got to be honest, did it right. In Exalted First Edition, which is the first White Wolf book I read, there were all these cool backgrounds, and they would always go from 1 to 5 dot, and it was a bell curve. And it's not supposed to be. You're supposed to say 5 dot's awesome, 3 dot's good, 1 dot kinda meh. But it was always like, okay, let's just take mentor, because that's the best one. A 1 dot mentor is some guy you don't really know, who's kind of like your distant uncle or something.
And he's not very good.
And he's not very good, he can't really teach you anything, he doesn't really know you. A 3 dot mentor is a mentor. It's some guy who can probably teach you some skills, he's maybe a decent martial artist or something. A 5 dot mentor in Old Exalted is like the
super important
world's greatest martial artist who does not have time for you or remember who you are.
Yeah.
So that's what like, you get to above 3 dots and it starts to suck more.
And it's sort of the same thing with, like, influence of, okay, 1 dot, you might be able to talk your way into getting a better seat at a restaurant or get into a bar. 3 dot, okay, you're a locally known celebrity, maybe you've got a really popular YouTube station. 5 dot, you're well known by everyone and nobody likes you and everyone's out to get you now. You're like, oh, good.
Yeah, there was a nation building one in Exalted where, like, 1 dot, you were, like, the local mayor of a city, and at 5 dots, it actually said you're probably at war right now.
Yeah.
People are trying to actively kill you. It's like, well, why would I take that? Oh, let's take 4 dots, thank you.
Yeah.
So this game does it right. A mentor, for example, a 1-dot mentor is
just a dude who maybe knows a couple things.
where a 5-dot mentor is significantly invested in you, as opposed to not knowing who you are because they're too important to care.
Yeah, the dots actually represent the personal desire to see you succeed. So even beyond just, I can train you in things, he's like, I want to give you advice, I want to, make sure you go down the right path, and so on.
There's always been kind of a visible power disparity when it comes to these backgrounds. For example, items, Exalted in particular, it's like, well, I'll take 5 dots of artifact because I need a bunch of magic weapons and junk all over me.
Yeah.
Where Contacts is, 5 guys.
Yeah.
Especially in this one. In this one, a 1-dot in Contacts means a guy. A 5 dots in Contact means 5 guys.
Oh, sweet. I know a sweet burger joint.
It's a middling burger joint.
Fuck you, it's delicious. And the problem with that is they also have one of the backgrounds is you can have a detective's license.
Yeah.
And the detective's license is, for every point in there, it just lowers the difficulty of finding things out. So if you have 5 dots in having a detective license, you are Sherlock Holmes, even something that's like difficulty 10 goes down to difficulty 5, it becomes super easy. You are all about finding out information. However, if you have 5 dots in Contacts, you just know 5 guys and maybe they might know something, but maybe not.
Yeah. You know what else I like is under life insurance policy, which is one of the backgrounds you can have.
Yeah.
You can be insured by the Orpheus group for various reasons. If you die, then a whole bunch of cool things happen. What I like is, again, we talked about this a little earlier about how this is one of those games about how a super office building comes and contacts you and puts you in a position where you're always wearing a suit and drinking, like, antique cocktails with supermodels. That's basically the job they suddenly offer you. With the life insurance policy, it mentions that even if you have a basic life insurance policy, it covers 2 full-service massages per week.
Yeah.
Right. I remember, because my life insurance policy that I get through my crappy museum job comes with a lot of massages.
Hey man, you are astrally projecting to fight the dead, so, fuck you.
Oh, that's a good point. I do need a lot of massages for my astral form.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Alright, you got me there.
So,
also, 5 dots just gets you more massages and more money when you die.
well, and you get more vacation time.
Oh, perfect!
This is my favorite thing is, what does this give me? More time where your character isn't involved in the game. Oh, that's good.
Can we go on an adventure right now? Oh, I'm sorry, Jerry's on vacation, he's in Tahiti.
Oh, sweet. We're gonna do the Brady Bunch Goes to Hawaii as an Orpheus game.
We're just gonna go fuck up his vacation?
We're gonna show up in his fucking grass hut and be like, I'm haunting your grass hut!
Oh my god. Okay, so those are backgrounds. Once you've got yourself a nicely assembled character with some skills and some gear and the power and the ability to become a ghost and various ghost powers, then you go off as a crucible and you deal with problems that the Orpheus group puts forward.
Now, I would like to mention real quick, you had mentioned this before with the crucible. Mm-hmm. You can share vitality and so on. This is really interesting for the White Wolf, because normally you have a coterie or a circle or whatever, but it's mostly just, this is your party, we just gave a name to it. But your crucible actually matters, because like you said, you can do vitality sharing, but you also have all of the different horrors, like the Banshee Whale, Haunting, all that stuff, have secondary effects that you can use to help other people when they're using powers. So let's say I'm a poltergeist, and I'm trying to huck a thing at a dude. Okay, well, my buddy the Will-O-Wisp decides he's just gonna pour raw energy into what I'm doing, and he just gives me an extra, 2 vitality to spend on this ability. So, in that way, it made it so that your circle really wanted to work together. It made an in-game reason to RP a tight group.
Which is awesome, and I am always a big fan of that. 4th edition Dungeons & Dragons is an example of where all the characters are built around comboing with each other. Like, you have this guy activate this, and it activates this for this guy, and so on, and it's fun. There are situations where I'm not a huge fan of this. I'll be honest with you. It happens in Dungeons & Dragons. It could happen here, which is where your players eventually math out who's got the best way to hit something. And from that point forward, everyone's just pumping energy into that one guy's abilities.
And the thing is, with that type of thing, you go, okay, what are you fighting? You're fighting a ghost. Alright, we have a Will-O-Wisp. He can shoot fire at ghosts. Well, he's probably going to do the most damage. Great. So we'll have the poltergeist and the whoever just pump as much of their vitality into him as possible. Which makes sense. The same way that, alright, our mission in this one is to scare people out of the house. So we're gonna give all of our vitality to the Banshee and the Haunter so that they can make people afraid and we can do spooky effects.
Well, that just turns the game into a peg-hole puzzle. Like, that's Final Fantasy X type stuff, where it's like, well, what's out there? Well, we got a flying thing and an armor thing and a floaty energy thing. Oh, well, then I need the sword guy and the wizard lady and the dude with the water polo ball. Like, that's where, it's not like it's the worst thing ever. I mean, we're describing this in very base situations. I just always see that potential for abuse when it comes to kind of pumping each other's mechanics, is that eventually you'll math out what's most likely and just always do that.
Well, again, I think the thing is, it always depends on the situation.
Yeah, and the party. The players, even.
Yeah. So if you've got a situation where it's, we need to get people out of this house. Let's say no one's playing a Haunter. You can't do that.
Yeah.
Alright, well, if you've got a puppet master, maybe you go, alright, we're gonna make him haunt the dude's kid, and we're gonna make a really creepy child. And then we'll have the Banshee do yelling stuff, and then the poltergeist can move things around, and whatever your stated mission is, and people will hire the Orpheus group to do stuff. Whether it's, we need you to get rid of the ghosts in this house because they're haunting it, or we need you to scare someone out of this property because we're trying to get them to sell this building so we can develop a mini-mall, or whatever it happens to be.
Right, and the Orpheus group, by the way, is one of those consultant firms that doesn't tell you, they don't want you to know that they have ghosts. That's not the point. They just accomplish tasks.
Well, the thing is, they're the good guys of this. There is another group that's like Orpheus group that is sort of the villain version of them.
Right.
So you've got Orpheus group, and they try to do things sort of above board.
Although they make a constant stream of references to how they can, like, cheat at stock markets and stuff like that. Yeah.
They usually try to stay on the straight and narrow, whereas the competitor, Terrell and Squibb, is the group that is like, we only have super high paying, like, we get paid by government officials and rock stars and the elite of the elite, but they all do, like, we don't ask any questions, whatever it is, we will, like, it's implied that they'll just murder people, they don't even give a fuck. And it's also sort of implied that they're probably being bankrolled by specters, and that they're probably evil.
Spectres, once again, are evil ghosts. They're ghosts that have their spite rating all the way cranked up, and so they just spend all their time being evil. What are the monsters in this game? Like
monsters are specters.
Spectres, which come in a variety of formats,
and it's mostly how you died or what you were. So there's something like, there's a Lost Boy. The Lost Boy is if you were a child that died, whether it was, you died on the street, or of starvation, or abuse,
as
or
long
something.
as it happened in Santa Carla.
So if you're a kid that dies, and it's something horrific, essentially, then you might come back as a Lost Boy, and this is a creepy ghost child.
If you died and your name was Corey.
Oh, but he did die. Oh, that's so sad.
I feel bad that I said that.
And then there's things like, Jasons, and they give them horror movie
trope names, yeah.
So you've got, like, Reapers, and you've got Jasons, and a Jason is someone that is a very powerful possessing entity that will take someone over and then just start killing people. And because the possessing entity is in there and driving them, like Jason, if you stab whatever he's possessing, he's like, I don't care. You stabbed me in the chest, but it's not the guy who's in charge. I'm still just moving his body as a spirit. So you get that sort of implacable foe thing. So that's where you get the name
right,
from.
And presumably they also come with off-screen teleportation. It's weird that the game doesn't have a Freddy.
Well, and this is the thing. They made this game...
Oh, right.
Very enclosed. Most of the other games, regardless of whether it's White Wolf or not, most games make a setting and then make a bunch of splat books for it. So, whether you're D&D with your hojillion different splat books, or even just Vampire with splat books that mostly cover different settings, so you can have, like, Detroit by night and stuff like that. this had a very standard plot to it. So you could have the first 5 books were the only 5 books that ever came out for Orpheus, and they were all the different plot settings. So it had a storyline to it, and when it finished, they were done. And so the different Splat books would come out with different ghosts as well. So you had one that was kind of like Pennywise the Clown from It, that was all about trying to lure children into things and murder them, and then created Lost Boys from that. And so, if you ever found the den of whatever this ghost was, they would usually have an entourage of these children that they had murdered. And so,
and then they
the
turn into a turtle and a spider, and you'd have to have an underage orgy.
So, they came out with more. There were sort of a baseline, like 5 or 6 specters.
Okay.
In this book, and then they came out with more in the subsequent ones.
So they had so in future books you would get your Chuckies and your Pinheads.
Yeah, you'd get more stuff like that. Yeah, so you'd get, okay, what is this? It's a haunter that specifically haunts dolls, and so you get your creepy doll trope. You get all of your various horror movie things. They're like, alright, we watched a bunch of horror movies and decided, how can we do this?
Sure. So, this game seems like it's actually a reasonably playable game. You've got some interesting ghost mechanics, you've got some interesting ghosts to fight. It's fairly self-contained, which I always like in a game. I like a game that's got a clear delineated setting, because there's less impetus to just play murder hobos.
Yeah, and they say in this as well that Orpheus knows nothing of the rest of the world of darkness, and they know about ghosts, but they don't know about vampires, they don't know about changelings or werewolves.
No vampires.
So they're like, don't make this game about, like, okay, you're an Orpheus agent, and you're haunting a place, and there's a salubri in this place, and he's commanding their Zamitsi to go. Okay, stop it. We don't care about your vampire clans.
I don't even know what the fuck those words meant. I think Zamitsi are the ones that look like self-made Klingons, right? Is that...
they are the ones with fleshcraft. And this... I'm not surprised you don't know Salubri, because they are a Splat book clan that only existed in the Dark Ages.
That doesn't matter. I have never cracked a vampire book. It's not true. Actually, when we were researching games to review in the future, I found a copy of the Guide to Vampire LARPing, like the official White Wolf guide to...
Theater of the Mind.
Yeah, Theater of the Mind, and flipped through that a little bit, but it was so insufferable that I just put it back down.
Well, yeah, LARPing with White Wolf is pretty insufferable.
Also, can you imagine LARPing with White Wolf where you'd need a big old hardcover 300-page book telling you how to do it? Because, as far as I can tell, LARPing primarily concerns sitting around in a rec room at a dorm.
And just rock, paper, scissoring.
Well, if you even get to that, mostly it's just standing around. The couple LARPs I've seen are just people sort of having arguments about in-character, like...
Oh, well, it's all just super roleplay, and then if you need to make a, like, I'm attacking, or I need to try to do this power.
It feels very fan-to-me every time I look at it, because it's just like, well, my character would never do that, because of course he was raised by Doctor Who.
Okay.
So, anyway,
LARPing, Well, let's go ahead and move on to the most and least favorites.
Oh, sure. Yeah, okay. Why don't you go first, because this is really more your game.
Well, my most favorite is gonna be the setting. I love this Orpheus is my one that got away. I bought the main book for this. I bought the first few splats for it. I really wanted to run this. I love horror movies. I love horror genre in general for things. And the setting for this was so much fun that I never got the chance to run it, but I absolutely am so sad that I never got to. So the setting for this is what I fell in love with. The whole fish out of water thing with humans treading where they shouldn't go. You've got all the awesome special effects between having high spite rating or the stains or the specters and all of these different ways to do creepy settings or horrific things that come out of the walls to get you. I just absolutely love that.
All right. And your least favorite thing?
Least favorite thing is that it had a lot of baggage from the old World of Darkness. It was towards the tail end, one of the last things that came out in the old World of Darkness. So it did feel a little more modern. Not quite as much as Exalted, but it did feel a little more together. But still, things like ones, subtracting successes, things like that, it really felt like a little too punishing, I feel. His Old World of Darkness was very punishing.
Yeah.
For if you didn't roll well, you could really fuck up.
Right, which swung the other way in New World of Darkness.
Well, yeah, where you just sort of don't ever fail.
Okay, so I'm going to say my favorite thing about this game is the character creation. I feel like it walks you right down a path where you start with nothing and end up with a character that's got a very solid set of mechanics. There's a lot of things you choose when you're picking this game. You choose two different types of personality that you're going to have kind of counterplaying off each other. You choose your semi-race and your semi-class and what you were in life and what you brought with you as what you are now. It's an interesting set of tools to give you a fully fleshed out character to begin play. And I like that. So I'm going to give it that. I like games where character mechanic or character creation is a good process that guides you through and doesn't have any traps. Now, this game is probably going to have traps because it's Old World of Darkness, and White Wolf was always about using a different mechanic for character creation than it was for character advancement during the game. So you would know early on that it was way cheaper to buy skills during character creation than it was during advancement, and so people could cheat, more or less. Anyway, I still like it. I like that this game gives you a good fleshed out character by the end.
Yeah.
Least favorite thing I've talked about a bit. If this was New World of Darkness, I'd be going into how it's impossible to ever fail at a roll, because there's so many different things you can do to ensure that you succeed. But in this game, my least favorite thing is going to be the vocabulary. I just can't get... every time I open the book and start reading through it, I'm just like, okay, so my lament is from haunting to the shade of my hue that pigments are horror-themed with the specter of a Jason. What? How come none of these are just... We got into a little bit about the whole GNS theory and the gamer narrativist simulationist. This book is so up the simulationist creek, where every word is designed to keep you happily ensconced in kind of your fictive headspace.
Well, yeah, everything that you call it is what the characters in the actual game call it.
Yeah.
So a person that works for Orpheus would actually call someone that was a haunter, they would call that their shade.
Right. And I understand that and I can kind of appreciate it, but by the same token, whenever I sit down to play a game, I like knowing that I'm sitting down to play a game. I don't like pretending I'm not. I don't know if that came from in the mid-90s when role-playing games were so not cool that you had to convince yourself you were doing something else. But I like knowing when someone asks me a rule-related question, I like knowing that they're asking me a rule-related question and not just asking me a random collection of ghost-related word salad.
Okay.
So, there's that. Would you play this game? I don't even need to ask.
Oh, God, I want to play this game. It is still... I want to get the last 2 Splat books, and I want to run this at some point.
I would totally play this game. I've never played Old White Wolf, I've never played Old World of Darkness. I've never played Old White Wolf. I'd like to see it just for completest sake. Played the hell out of Exalted, and of course we're nerdy enough that we actually play in a Palladium Rifts campaign that was converted to D10.
Yeah.
Just cuz.
Because that's way better than Palladium.
Yeah, and you can convert Palladium to anything and be going in the right track.
Yeah, seriously, the GURPS Palladium is probably better than the Palladium system.
Right, okay. So, we both agree this game is good.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, this is a really good game. This is a welcome breath of fresh air from Prime Directive.
Oh, God. Seriously, going from Prime Directive to this is just like someone shoving shit down your throat and then being like, I'm so sorry, here's a 7-course meal that's delicious.
Yeah.
And 2 massages. Also some vacation time.
Yeah, and unfortunately it does pack the shit down your throat. We're never going to get rid of Prime Directive.
Oh, no, it's still in there forever.
It's
a part of me now.
Yeah. Okay, so, this month, we're going to be reviewing another horror game to keep Horrortoberfest alive.
Yep.
We have yet to decide what it is. It's probably going to be going back to the Palladium well and hitting beyond the supernatural, but
possibly.
But who knows? We'll come up with something and let you know when we've got it. And also, stay tuned to the System Mastery website, systemmasterypodcast.com.
If you haven't already, I will be putting up my Horrortoberfest reviews. I will review one horror movie a day, every day of October. I'll be having different themes for the weeks. So if you want to check out certain types of horror movies, you can also just check out the themed week.
And I am a huge movie curmudgeon, and I hate most movies, so I'm not going to do that, because it would just be a bunch of one-word reviews.
This is balls.
That's way too many words. Balls will do.
I know that balls will do.
Balls will always do. Okay, so as always, if you like our podcast, check us out at systemmasterypodcast.com. Check out John's Afterthought videos, also hosted at systemmasterypodcast.com. Look for our page, System Mastery, at Facebook. Check our Twitter, at System Mastery, or just email us at systemmastery@gmail.com. And thank you very much for listening. John, have a wonderful day.
Yes, and a spooky day.
Oh, I forgot, it's Horrortoberfest.
Spooky.
And an extra spookalicious haunted Halloween to you too.
Too spooky.